Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is the 2024 Town Council Candidate Forum where KICA has asked our candidates to come and speak with us about issues of the day. A few ground rules. I'm going to start with questions directed to both candidates. I'm going to alternate back and forth. We flipped a coin at the beginning, and the first one will go to Brad. We've agreed that the answers will be limited to 3 minutes so that we can accommodate as many topics as possible. I'm going to try to leave time at the end for audience questions, and I hope you have some. And other than that, I think it'll be very straightforward. So we'll go ahead and get started.
You said the first one's 1 minute, though, right?
You know what I said? I said everyone knows you guys.
Yeah,
we can blow through the first one.
So that's fine.
So the first one's easy. Could you provide us with a brief introduction of yourself?
And it will be extraordinarily brief, Kevin. First of all, thank you for hosting, you and KICA for hosting this event. I want to thank everybody who's here and who's watching. I do have a bone to pick with KICA, however. It's the scheduling of this event right now. The Tar Heels are on TV, the Gamecocks are on TV, and the Illini are on TV. It was a toss-up for me as to whether I was actually going to be here. March Madness or Mayoral Forum.
This will keep it quick.
But I decided at the end of the day, the Mayoral Forum won out. It was a tough call, though. But thank you again for hosting us. Look forward to the conversation with you and Michael.
I can call out the score. Yeah. I can only add, usually my team's plays on Saturday and Sunday, so I'm safe. But to your question, I want to answer this. So born, raised, educated in Germany, came over to the United States as a student for an internship when I was 23, fell in love with this country and with the people, and my wife and I took the first chance to come over here 25 years ago. But my career started in engineering and business. I was a consultant. I was running large companies on a global basis. It took us to Brazil, to China, and to the US, gladly. And this is also how we ended up here 25 years ago. And like I think probably everybody in the room, we fell in love with this island and couldn't let go.
That's great. So we'll come right back to you. What do you think is the primary attribute that would make you the best choice for mayor?
I think you have to look at the mayor as somebody who, in Latin, you would say primus inter pares, so it's like the equal among the equals. But that already defines you must be a team player, right? I mean, the mayor alone can get nothing done. So it's really about working with a team of council members, of town employees to get stuff done, right? And I think that's what I've learned in my career. That's how I was able to manage global teams. That were literally spread over the entire world, and was able to work with this team because of the fact that we became a team. And I think that's the important part for being a mayor, that we unleash the powers of this team, so to speak. But at the same time, also to work with the community, right? I mean, we alone are not capable of really, getting all of our problems out of the way. Without the community, without the people sitting here, we are nowhere. So that's also part of that team. KICA is part of that team that you need to engage as a mayor. So that's how I look at this role. That's what I've been trying to do over the last 2 years that I'm involved, 3 years that I'm involved with the town. So that for me is the most important part, to be a mayor.
Great. Brad, same question?
Thank you, Kevin. We're both council members, and each council member has a vote on the council, and the mayor does as well. The mayor has no greater role in the council than does any other council member under our form of government. I ran for council for many of the reasons Michael just elucidated, to preserve and protect what makes this place so special, why we are all here. And I still abide by those objectives. But the reason I decided to run for mayor is because of the unique role of the mayor in our form of government under state law. A lot of people I talk to have the misimpression that it is the council, that we have a council form of government where the council is responsible both for passing laws and administering those laws. That's not the case. Many other people are mistaken that we have the council-manager form of government, where the council is responsible for passing laws and the town administrator or town administrator is responsible for administering and enforcing those laws. That's not our form of governance in South Carolina. Our form of governance is the mayor-council form of governance, exactly like Charleston City. And it is the mayor who is responsible, statutorily responsible, for administering and enforcing the affairs of the town, of the municipality of Kiawah Island. And I think it's critically important that the mayor be uniquely focused on that function, ensuring the faithful execution of our laws, overseeing staff, directing staff, mentoring staff, and leading staff so the town administration can better serve all of you.
Great, well said. So I think it's your turn to go first this time. There's been a great deal of community feedback around the coordination between the town and KICA, especially with respect to the spit conveyance. What would you do to foster a more collaborative and coordinated approach between the entities?
No question, Kevin, that in my view, and I suspect, Michael just said this, and I suspect he would agree, that we need much greater collaboration and cooperation between KICA and town. Each have their own sets of responsibilities, but there are so many issues where our interests overlap, our responsibilities overlap. There are certainly some gray areas. Public safety is one of those. The resiliency of the island is another one. Even talking about things like trash on the beach, there's actually kind of shared jurisdiction and responsibility. We need to figure out how to address those kind of day-to-day blocking and tackling issues. But it's critically important that we actually talk to one another. We discussed in our last strategic planning meeting actually setting up a quarterly meeting between council and the KICA board. We should be doing that. We should be meeting regularly otherwise. You and I were talking about it in kind of a lighthearted way earlier. I'm going to be on the golf course, weather permitting, with the new KICA board member tomorrow, but I made a point when all the KICA board members were elected to reach out to them. I suspect Michael's done the same thing. We just need to foster more of that. To Michael's credit, he's kind of taken the lead, and you have, with regard to this upcoming event, to try to have a social gathering to promote better cooperation and dialogue. But some of that's got to be institutionalized. And we also have to appreciate that there are going to be differences of view, and sometimes there's going to have to be maybe a little bit of headbutting, trying to figure out how to deal with public access issues, how to deal with issues like the spit. Now we're all sitting down and talking with another, but public safety is going to be a big one. How to manage development, construction, traffic going forward. We have to talk to one another.
That's great. Same question?
Yeah, I think everybody understands that we will not solve our challenges on the island, and we have a few of those, without collaboration. KICA certainly being the first one to collaborate, but there's also others. The Maze of K comes to mind. But I think there is a little bit of a lack of this that occurred over the years. Yes, there was, as maybe not a lot of people here in the room know, but there was always this meeting of the mayor, the chair, the GM of the resort, and representative of the partners once a month, and they were chatting. I don't know what they were chatting about, but there was at least something. But what really never happened is that we collaboratively, sit in a room and discuss topics, right? And as Brad said, both of us were very vocal back in the February 23 retreat, that we need to foster this. And Kevin, you and I tried to do this, just on a very casual basis with something like a little cocktail party, but we failed. I really, really hope that with the new board that this collaboration will be put on much sounder, base for us to meet more regularly, not just casually. And we actually have a first step in that direction on April 1st, when we are going to have a little farewell party for the mayor who leaves us. John Labriola, and I invited all of the KICA board members to this, and except for one person, I believe everybody is coming. So I think that's a starting point. But as casual this will be, and there's no agenda and there's no topics about business, that's very clear. If some of you might be worried about a quorum, but it's a starting point for me only. We have to get these two organizations so much closer together. We all have our distinct responsibilities, but we will only be able to face the developers with the force we have if we are doing this together as KICA, as the town, as the Conservancy. We need to stay and as one front, because otherwise we will not master the challenges that we have in front of us.
And if I would just observe, we do have at least 4 KICA board members in the room here, and we have 4 council members in the room here. I think that's reflective of the mindset.
Is that a quorum now? But it's in public, so it's okay.
There you go. Yeah, it's all public. All right, so I guess, Michael, this comes back to you since you answered last. Some KICA members have expressed concern to me regarding increasing and overlapping rules and regulations. How can the town, the ARB, and KICA eliminate overlap and simplify our governance and not start growing over on top of each other? And the tree ordinance is one that comes up often.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things that have grown over the years and have been probably more mastered by staff and both of our staffs collaborating. But I think, they have become more obvious, and that's why I think we have several activities in place. One of them comes to mind is the review of all our ordinances, both on the zoning side, but also in general. And that has already created a few important changes that we made in this respect. There are some overlaps. Are we going to be able to eliminate them all? Probably not. But the collaboration that I was talking about before is what we really need to make sure that we are doing the right things, and especially that we are also not confusing the community with these things, right? We need to take clear actions, we need to take clear responsibilities, and this will help us to go through issues that we have on the island.
And that clarity or lack thereof is a real present issue and a real challenge going forward. Some of that is probably, unfortunately, inevitable, given the very unique governance structure that exists on Kiawah Island. I mean, we talk about the maze of Ks, but this is a unique municipality. KICA carries out many of the functions typically carried out by municipalities. But at the same token, it is the municipality that has the inherent police powers of the state and the government to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. But that's subject to a bunch of constraints under statutory law, open meetings law being one of those, but there are a host of others. The members of KICA, who is every single resident of the town, can choose to impose on themselves more rigorous requirements and regulations than a municipality may do. You have to comply with the municipal laws, but the residents may choose, the members may choose for KICA to be more onerous in its regulations. That's what we've had under the general covenants, for example. We have to respect that. The town has to respect the fact that there are general covenants, there are restrictive covenants that apply to all homeowners. We can't override those. The town has to respect those, but the town can set the baseline, and that's what we were trying to do with the tree ordinance, for example. There's a public interest in protecting trees. We want to establish some kind of baseline. That's still under discussion with the Planning Commission and others, reasonably so. But then we need to understand, okay, where can we protect the public interest, but at the same time, with the ARB or KICA, carrying out its responsibilities and function, not overly burden those that we're trying to help. We're got to be a service organization. You are, KICA is, and the town needs to be as well.
And just to add to this, I mean, I know that there are KICA board members that are always very cautious about what the town does and what KICA does. In the 3 years that I'm now involved in, I have not seen a single incident, discussion, debate, or even a decision that would make me believe there's anybody in the town that would like to start questioning the shared responsibilities and the divided responsibilities. And as Brad said, they are unusual. But I have never seen, and I would never entertain, to be very honest, anything that would, start debate about, where to move responsibilities. I think they are set, they work, they are accepted by the community. Why would we make a change to something? Where we do need to change, as we talked about earlier, is to work a little closer together. That's.
Do you want to follow up?
I would just clarify perhaps one thing is understanding who is legally responsible for what. Where are the jurisdictional lines as a matter of law is critically important to understand, because then you've got to work within that framework. You can, and you need to, but you need to understand that it's not always as simple as we would like it to be, and sometimes maybe there can be informal agreements. Sometimes it's going to have to require a change in the covenants. It may require change in the KICA rules and regulations bylaws. It may require a change in our ordinances, or it can just be an MOU. Yes, we need to solve things, but we do need to understand that we've got to make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's with respect to how we proceed on those things.
All right, so along those lines, I think this one goes back to Brad, if I'm keeping track properly. The town was established 35 years ago, and this is somewhat along the same lines, and has consistently grown in size and reach. What do you see as the optimal scope of the town's services and regulations, and is there a limit to its growth? An obvious stopping point?
The Planning Commission is working through the comprehensive plan.
I'm sorry, and not just physical town, but the services they offer, what they choose to regulate, et cetera.
And fair point, and those are obviously not unrelated. There are different points of view on this. I think my inclination has been that the town of Kiawah Island doesn't need to be more than Kiawah Island. And then, now it's Freshfields. But we don't need to annex simply to grow the town. Many other municipalities look to grow in order to provide jobs. They need it for economic growth, economic development purposes for their citizenry. Nobody on Kiawah Island resides on anything that depends on anything the town does in order for their economic livelihood, not a single resident. We're very different in that way. My inclination would be say, if we're going to annex, if we're going to expand the geographic footprint, then it should be for buffering purposes, not for more commercial development, not necessarily for more residential development, but to protect and preserve our unique ecosystem and enhance our resiliency. But that relates to the service at some point as well. We need to be more service-oriented, more customer-centric, in my view, as a town administration with regard to our citizenry now. I would be leery about looking to provide a lot of additional commercial services beyond what we do currently. If we were to expand, and if you were to have additional residents outside the gate, that presents a whole host of different kinds of issues. Do those people have access to Kiawah Island and these amenities? If they do not, will they demand that the municipality provide schools, hospitals, parks, libraries, pools, and other amenities? And they probably would legitimately have that expectation. So those are the kinds of challenges we've got to think through. I think we need to focus on protecting what it is we have rather than trying to be Hilton Head, Beaufort, or other communities.
Michael?
We have no goal, no mandate, I would even call it, to grow the municipality from a geographical point of view. I have never seen it. I would also strictly oppose it. There are two exceptions, though, where I think it could make sense for the community to consider is if the Goodwin family, for example, would come to the town and ask if we would be interested to annex Endel West, at least the commercial development. There could be some benefits for the community if we don't have different jurisdictions between what is now called Freshfields and would be added on the southern part of it. That could be a reason. Do we have an obligation for this? No. Are we going to look at this very, very closely and then judge, is this a benefit for the community or not? Absolutely we will. And there's a second area that I would put into consideration if something occurs, which again would likely be linked to the Goodwin family, is if they would offer property that is not developed along Kiawah Island Parkway. I think, Brad, that's also what you were referring to. I think that would also trigger, at least for me, the need to look into this, because it would give us more influence on what will happen, or hopefully nothing happens on these properties. Those are the only 2 points. But as Brad said, I don't think that there's a need, that there's a mandate, that there is any really strong argument for us to just grow for the growth of it. I don't see this, and I would oppose that.
So the next one for you, along those lines, and talking more about services, talk about your views on the town forming a municipal police department.
All right, so safety and security is something we all should be concerned about, okay? I mean, we all feel like we are passing through the first gate and we are safe, and to a great degree, this is the truth. And we have different activities. I mean, we have, as we heard also this morning, we now have 5 full-time security personnel that drives around with these wonderful white pickup trucks with the green lights on top. And I think we all appreciate when we see them driving through our streets at day and at night, actually. We have security from the resort for their particular areas of property. We have the town's beach patrol, which is very important to govern the beach area. We have our town's code enforcement. For all of them, there is a certain limitation of what they can do, right? And that's when the police force needs to come in. Now, what we have experienced recently over the last year or so is that our police presence on the island is questionable, let's say. We had incidences over the last 6 months, for example. Many of you will remember we had a bomb threat in Freshfields. It took the police department of Charleston County almost 20 minutes to have the first vehicle at the scene of the potential crime. We had 3 cases of potential weapon use. It turned out to be a hoax, but we had these cases. The times were between 12 minutes and 23 minutes. So I think we have to look at this as a need of service level that we expect. Now, we have started as a council a project now that goes into, we approved this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we approved this project to help us to understand what are the options, right? Our own police department is one of them. Brad and I work intensively on making sure that RFP actually really looks at all the different options. An option with Seabrook. Why we don't have a potential police department together with Seabrook? They have exactly the same problems. Now, I've talked to quite a bit of people, experts in the police field, and they all have told me, independent from each other, with the growth of Johns Island, with the growth of our communities, but especially also with the growth of Johns Island, we will not avoid to have a more and better police presence on the island in the next 5 years. That's why the council was active. That's why we are looking at this. Thank you. Sorry, that was
no, you're right on time. You guys are doing great. We're on track and concise answers.
I agree with much, if not all, of what Michael just said. Public safety is job one. I mean, the responsibility of the municipalities to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its administration. At least those first 2 are addressed by public safety. And it's critically important that we explore all options. And it's the reason that we did approve an RFP, consultant to do a needs and assessment and gap analysis as to what public safety resources are on the island and off island that are accessible, better understand what are the roles and responsibilities of KICA security, of the resort security, of the Barrier Island Ocean Rescue and code enforcement, as well as the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. What could we do collaboratively with the county, with Seabrook? Exactly right. But I would not put all the onus necessarily on the town as to stand up a separate police force. I think it's a conversation that we need to have with KICA, because at the end of the day, we're all behind a gate. Freshfield's an exception. We should work out something with regard to, with Seabrook, particularly in that regard. But KICA has the authority to hire constables under South Carolina state law, the law enforcement program. The KICA board may include, for liability reasons or other reasons not to do that, who have actually, they're armed officers and they have law enforcement capabilities. KICA could do that. KICA has not done that. And so I think that needs to be part of the conversation as to what is the best way forward to collectively provide and collaboratively provide for our public safety, to be able to address any situation that might arise.
All right, I've got one more, and then we're going to roll to the audience. Hopefully people have questions. And I think this comes back to you, Brad. Roger Warren announced at the December 2023 Town Council meeting that the resort intends to negotiate a new development agreement with the town. What concerns or opportunities do you see as the town should negotiate, that the town should negotiate in this agreement? What have we learned? What should we be concerned about?
Well, so development agreements are a unique construct of state law. It's a way in which current councils, it's the only way in which current councils can bind future councils. To be honest with you, I've chafed as a council member and even as a citizen under the prior development agreement that we entered into because of its length and duration and because of some of the terms, and we didn't have the ability to change that, even though conditions on the ground had changed. So my starting point is a reluctance to bind future councils with regard to a development agreement unless there are clear public benefits in doing so. So if you're going to sit down and have a conversation about a new development agreement, the benefits to the developer, put aside the resort for a minute, are that they get to lock in the terms of the development agreement and current zoning for whatever length of time. It doesn't have to be 10 years, it could be shorter than that, then it could be expanded up to 10 years. But if you're going to give a developer that benefit, the whole point of development agreements under the South Carolina State Development Agreement Act is essentially there's a quid pro quo. There's investment in infrastructure and amenities that are supported by private capital that would not have to be carried out by public sector funds. And so if we're going to have that conversation, I think it's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have is, okay, you want the benefits and it's the resort to build, lock in development standards with regard to the development of West Beach and East Beach. Fine, you could do that by right now. What are the benefits for the community in doing that? And I think one question we have to step back and ask in that regard is, if Upper and Lower Beachwalker were never developed, if West Beach and East Beach were never developed, would any of us shed any tears over that? Do we actually need more dwelling units, 20% more dwelling units and more pressure on amenities and more traffic? But they do have rights, absolutely. So we need to recognize those, and if we want to have a conversation about a development agreement, that's something that's negotiated. Let's make sure that everything's on the table.
Great. Michael?
I think we have to understand that it is, the right of the resort to propose a development agreement, right? That's in their right as much as we have the right to say no. Well, actually, the Planning Commission is the first one to debate this. I think we also have to understand that what the resort is trying to do here is not leading to more dwelling units, as they are entitled to, right? We have to understand that. Actually, I believe what we have seen, both of us have seen in these first discussions, is actually that it will be much lower number of dwelling units than they would be entitled to. Just to make sure that everybody also here in the room understands that. But probably the biggest difference, as well as the biggest learning from our development agreement with the partners, with South Street Partners, is that we have to be a lot more forceful to create a win-win. That's basically also what Brad, I think, wanted to say. Is yes, they have certain rights, and for them it's a benefit to have these rights for 10 years, sealed. Not new rights, but existing rights that they can plan. And I think Goodwin is a rather slow planner in that respect, which is, I think, good for us. What we have to make sure, though, is that we create the other win, and that's the win for the community. And to give some examples, building new dwelling units is one thing, right? Not helping us to deal with the traffic that this creates at critical intersections, for example, at the first gate, etc. That's a win that I need to see in a new development agreement, that the resort clearly commits that they will pay their fair share for us to manage. And I'm not necessarily saying they need to pay all of it, but they need to pay their fair share for certain areas of our traffic system, for example, right? That's one thing.
Impact fees or something like that.
Well, I mean, something that would help us to finance, and we have already a couple of critical intersections on the island that when we just would add another, X hundred vehicles per day, that this will become even more cumbersome. So they need to contribute to this, just as an example. That's the win-win. If we get to this point, I think that's great, and I think then I would have no objections against the new development agreement with the resort. If we can't reach a point, then it will be very difficult.
I just want to note one thing, Kevin. If they go by right, we could potentially impose impact fees to address the additional cost and pressures on public infrastructure of that development. But if we're in a negotiation over a new development agreement, then you don't have to go down the impact fees route. You can simply say,
it's part of the deal.
That's
Exactly.
part of the deal.
And I think that's what we should prefer, because impact fees would create, again, potential legal routes, etc. So if we can build this into a development agreement in a way that we all understand this is a win-win, I think that's okay. If we can't, then I don't see a majority for this.
So I'm going to go to the audience next. We went through 8 questions. Is there anything either of you want to elaborate on before we go to the audience? Anything?
I'm eager to see the
Yes,
audience.
Great. So do we have any questions? Larry?
Yeah, hi. Larry Rutkowski, Sparrowhawk Road.
Just going to give you, since we're on camera here.
Larry Rutkowski, 232 Sparrowhawk Road. The one party that wasn't mentioned by anyone today in your discussion of relationships and with other players in the island were the partners, the other developer. And I'd like to ask each of the mayoral candidates, and each of the town council candidates can bear this in mind as well, how you would characterize the nature of the town's relationship with the partners. And by that, I don't mean good, bad, indifferent, so-so, but sort of as a prefatory remark, I would say it's been my analysis that it's taken both KICA and the town and its constituent elements a long time to recognize that the partners, the current developers, are not the old developers, and that the relationship has changed over time. And so I'd like you to comment on that. Thank you.
Which one of us was supposed to go first on this one?
I think he was talking last, so that's why I remember.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about South Street's partners here. I think embedded in your question kind of is can we trust them or not? I guess is a little bit part of your question. First of all, I think we do all realize, certainly the council realizes, that we're not talking about Buddy Darby anymore, right? We are talking about people that are driven by profits and literally nothing else. They are driven by their own benefits in that respect. What we have tried to do is to build a relationship early in 2023, started based on a council decision. There was some prospects, some progress being made, But I'm more and more discouraged by what I see, what I experience, the time it takes to come to the table and actually fulfill what they're promised. Remember, we had a December meeting where, I think it was December meeting, where one of the partners stood up and said, we will, solve the parking issues, we will provide, a planned development for the other beach walker parcels, and we still haven't seen really a lot in that respect. So for us, it's clear that we have, unfortunately here, a partner that has very different objectives to what we have as an objective. And we realize this, of course, but it makes it very difficult to achieve something, right? If you have two parties at the table that are, very far away from each other, which I think makes it more and more likely that in certain topics where we are having a dispute, that we will have no other chance than going down the legal route. I don't know if that answers all your portions of the question. But.
Any number of issues, and we could obviously spend another hour kind of parsing that one, Larry. I would separate it out a little bit in this way. Depends on the different hat that the partners are wearing as an institution. They're the second largest employer on the island, one of the largest employers in Charleston County. They're a significant property owner. They bring a lot of traffic and value to the island. From that business perspective, as a business and property owner, I think it's critically important that we have a good working relationship with Kiawah Partners, South Street Partners. Where the disconnect comes is their different hat, where they're acting as a developer in the late stages of the development process. We're having gone through 3 developer transitions before in HOAs. You realize that early on in the process, interests are aligned because private capital is flowing in. Later on, private capital isn't flowing anymore. They're simply monetizing those assets and interests start to diverge. That's when it's critically important that you pay very close attention to what's going on. The thing that's frustrated me about the role that the partners have assumed is, talking about being the master developer for the island, going back almost 50 years with the Kuwaitis, and then the Buddy Darby, the Beach family, and Leonard Long, and saying, we're the same thing. And they're not. I'm a private equity guy. I come out of that world, and to Michael's point, I fully appreciate and applaud their desire to be profit motivated. And in order to realize a rate of return for their investor, that's a fiduciary responsibility. But let's not claim the mantle of being master developer of the island at the same time as you're doing that. And whether that's through exercising control of the ARB the way they do, to my view, benefit their projects, but to be fairly onerous with regard to individual property owners is an issue. We all got that little brochure, that nice little brochure that talked about the $30 million or something invested in the island. As a club member, and I am a Kiawah Island Club member, I benefit from all of that, and they've made a lot of investment in the club. Not a single one of those dollars was invested that they outlined was invested in public infrastructure or amenities for the island as a whole. And that's the problem right now. And to Michael's point, I haven't seen anything in terms of action coming out of the partners recently that gives me any comfort that there's going to be any change in that regard. They've said some reasonably good things. It hasn't been followed up with action. And what's happening with Sam Spit right now exemplifies that.
Let's go to it. Let me see. I've got 1, 2, 3, please. And then we'll, behind you.
Thank you.
Yes?
Tim Hill, 15 Surf Song Road. Brad and Michael, I've looked at your bios, as I hope other people who are going to be voting have looked at. And I've looked at your LinkedIn profiles, which is more elaborate than just the bio that the town put up. Tell us what in your experience and track record in your career will qualify you to be the best mayor and will provide the most value to our citizens?
I think you go first.
Okay. Thank you for that question, Tim. My background, for better and for worse, is fairly nonlinear, my professional career. It's predominantly been in finance and investment banking, including in private equity and private credit. But I've done stints in the nonprofit sector and had CEO roles in the public sector as well. And it's allowed me to understand and see from different perspectives the motivations and incentives, both of different actors in each of those sectors. And the motivations and incentives on both decision makers and staff in the nonprofit sector, in the public sector, and the private sector can be very different, but there are a lot of commonalities. And knowing how to harness that in terms of whether it's negotiating with private sector interest, with a public sector entity, or how to better motivate public sector staff to do even better at their jobs, are things that I've had experience doing in leadership roles, and particularly in the public sector, having led a private sector entity. And in addition, my nonlinear career path has meant that I've been both a lawyer and a principal and an investor, and it's given me the ability to, lack of a better term, kind of triangulate amongst kind of the different issues and interests that are involved. And when I first, came on the island, had a little too much time on my hand when I semi-retired, now I'm fully retired, I started doing the deep dive on the covenants, the general covenants, the KICA covenants, the development agreements, ordinances, MOUs, easement agreements, what have you, and then trying to figure out, peel away the layers of the onion, understanding there's a lot of complexity there. And what I learned, and I tried to share early on, was, gee, this is complicated stuff. And we're being outsmarted right now by the partners and Trenholm Walker, their lawyer, very good lawyer, and others. They wrote all these documents. They know how to navigate all this. We've got to match that on our side. And I think by dint of my career experience, those are things that I've done and can bring to the table in not only a council role, but role as a mayor.
Michael?
So my career path was probably less colorful than Brad's. I used to run big companies on a global basis, and especially the last 25 years of my career in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in South America. I think I would describe it this way. I was surprised myself when I got into this whole town business that a lot of the things that I learned during my career and accelerated on for my career are equally, applicable in a public office. It's about the team topics that I was talking about at the very beginning of the session. I think running a team in the town, just on a different scale, has the same or requires the same skills as those that I developed running global teams on a much bigger scale. But it's also, the ability to sit down, negotiate, draw a line, whatever you want to call it. This is what I've done my entire career. And I think that's what is important. And, the skills that are, around this is what we need to be, as Brad said, not to be outsmarted by some of them. In addition, I want to highlight one thing, and Tim, you're one of them. And there are a few others here in the room, and I'm sure will also watch this session. We are not alone anymore in the council, right? We have an incredible, active community that helps us to watch out if we are maybe outsmarted. And Trenholm, as Brad said, he is a smart guy. But so even if any of the two of us, or the council members that we have or will be elected, would be outsmarted, right? I think we can rely now on an incredible base of community members that help us to pay attention. And we should not forget that a lot of the things that came to light might be the parking issue, or more recently, what Brad also said, the KICA contract for the spit portions, et cetera. It was not us that found that out. We relied on people like Tim Hazel, for example, that brought these things to our attention. So even if we sometimes might not be the smartest in the room, but I'm so confident that we know how to deal with these things nowadays because we can rely on a long bench of skills.
If I just add one thing in that regard, Kevin, is we talked a lot about, it was discussed a little bit earlier at KICA's board meeting, greater transparency. I think part of the problem in the past is there wasn't a lot of transparency, and the lack of transparency was not so much the decision making, it's just with regard to the documents themselves. Nobody in the public really saw documents, and it wasn't until summer of last year where the 3 Beachwalker HOAs really pushed the town to put all the site plan materials on the public website for Upper and Lower Beachwalker, and then Cape Point Road, and now Night Heron's in there, and MUSC. That all of a sudden now you do have a lot of eyes on the ball. You're able to harness all this talent on the island to pay more attention. The reason the parking issue was missed in the first time, amongst perhaps other things, was because there wasn't a lot of transparency and visibility into that administrative review process. We've come a long way, and we need to continue to take advantage of exactly the people you mentioned, Michael, and others, in order to continue to be able to leverage what the town and KICA can do.
Do you want to follow up on that, or take the next question?
No, I think Brad said it very well.
We'll go here, and then we'll go over there next. I think one more on this side. I'm going to try to fit 2 or 3 more in and not have it run over an hour. Please.
David Burson, 180 Marsh Island Drive. Brad, Michael, thank you. Very reasonable answers to all the questions Kevin asked. If I close my eyes, each of you could have given the other answer. Are there any significant policy differences between you?
I think that would be
Yes, you're next.
very good question. The reason why I'm hesitating is I probably never thought about that. Because you're right. Brad and I have a lot of very similar opinions, right? Which is very healthy and very productive, right? We should not forget that. I think the main difference is not so much even the policies, is in the doing, right? And I think, when you look at my track record over the last 14, 15 months, I think you can see that I'm probably more the doer, getting stuff done, trying to accomplish something, sometimes successful, sometimes not. But I listen and pick it up, and even if it's something as little as, damn it, my trash wasn't picked up again today, right? So I think that's maybe the little bit of a difference that we have, which also roots, I believe, in our different careers, right? I mean, Brad is a very experienced lawyer, right? He looks at all these documents, and so I'm probably a little bit more pragmatic in trying to get stuff done for the community. That's more the difference I see, than really a policy difference.
Interesting question. I suspect there is not a wide gulf on policy, the big picture policy issues. It's, in some cases, we'll have differences of view as to how best to get from here to there. I do want to come back at something that Michael said a little bit on the kind of the doing thing. And by the way, I play a lawyer on TV, but listen, I haven't had anything to do with the practice of law in like
TV?
In 30 years. I used to play a lawyer on TV in 30 years. So I've been principally a CEO of public sector, private sector, and nonprofit organizations. So I'm absolutely in those roles focused on doing, getting things done, making the changes that are necessary. In this instance, just to be clear, I'm mindful of the fact that as a council member, the council itself, let alone any individual council member, does not have any statutory responsibility whatsoever under our form of government for town administration. That is the mayor's role. So I try not to step into, you can engage with staff, you can ask questions, hold them accountable. The council, nor does any council member have the ability to direct staff at all. Under our form of government, that is the mayor's role and responsibility. So what I would like to bring to bear is my private sector CEO experience in not only the private, not only my career experience, not only in the private sector, nonprofit sector, but also in the public sector in leading organizations to be able to affect change in the most productive and constructive way. That's what I've been able to do in the past, and what I would like to be able to do on behalf of Kiawah Island is in the role of mayor.
So what you're basically saying is that if I'm mayor, I legalize what I'm doing already today. Did I hear that?
All right, so I'm going to try to get two more in. Okay. So these next round of answers, let's go just a little quicker. Judy had her hand up. Okay. Okay. All right. Let Judy and then Paul.
All right. And I don't know if this is really appropriate for an election time kind of question, but it frightens me that the town has to rely on members of the community to bring things to the attention. It scares me that we didn't find the parking things, that we didn't find a lot of the things. And it makes me wonder, are you sure we have the right legal counsel for the town?
Go ahead.
I think that was my first one. So I will simply say this: I'm thus far fully confident in the law firm that we have retained as legal counsel for the town. Starting
last month.
The last month. So at least in that part of your question, Judy, and this is exactly one of the points where I would be focused on as mayor, very hands-on, in making sure that we are much more disciplined and rigorous in our administration and enforcement of our laws and regulations. I think it's unconscionable that for a project like the Cape, the town did not utilize outside resources to hire a municipal or civil engineer to oversee that project because it's beyond the scope of a single individual, and that's all we have. So nothing against him. Well, at the time, there was only one. At the time, there was only one. To be able to appropriately and effectively oversee and manage a project of that scope.
But I'm talking about the role of lawyers. I mean, it seems to me that you risk attempting to negotiate on behalf of the town. And I don't see that as a mayor role. I see that as the law firm role that you entrust and who reads every single document on earth and knows everything.
So I trust the new lawyers. I suspect Michael will not have a different view since he was very involved in their selection. But the issue also is they're only part-time. They're only called upon when needed. So they're not going to be inherently as well versed in all the minutiae of hundreds of thousands of pages of documents because we're paying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Make sure Michael gets in here too.
Let's pay it.
So, to your question, Judy, I had my first run-in with Joe Wilson when I was on the Planning Commission. I see two members sitting there smiling because it was a run-in. Very traditional, classic. It has always been my attitude to say, okay, is he the right guy? Maybe not, but let's try. Let's see. So I'm giving people the chance, but you can see we gave him a chance and we failed and we picked a new one. as Brad said, I'm very confident that the new firm we picked, and I remember that several people here in the room actually confirmed that we picked a very professional firm at the time, two months ago or something. And everything I've seen so far is very encouraging. The fact that this is not a full-time or a position, I think what made me believe that it's the right decision, because this firm has so much potential that a single person, even if we would hire him or her full-time and pay this person, an 80-hour week, we would still probably be coming short compared to what we now have at our disposal. We need to manage it, though. We need to make sure that we are paying the right money and the hours that they need to really work themselves through the documents. What I've seen in the last 4 weeks is that's what they're doing. So I feel actually very comfortable right now. To the other part of your question, is it really good that we need to rely on community members to find stuff that is not right? I can say, yes, you're probably right with this criticism, but for me, this is an asset because we cannot see all. I mean, Brad also said, I remember, he overlooked certain things in the ARDA, right? I mean, this is so complicated stuff that, we need more than 4 eyes, four eyes to find these kind of things, right? So that's why I am so incredibly grateful that we have these people that I mentioned to help us to not making a mistake. But now with a good lawyer, I think we're much better off.
Let's try to get Paul's question in. And then I think there's one more hand in the back. So we're going to do quick answers and get 2 more in, and then we'll call it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna make this quick because I'm gonna stipulate I'm looking for a yes/no answer.
Good luck with that, Paul.
I'd like to come back to the. No, I'm serious. Yes/no is what I'm looking for. So, I'd like to come back to this the question of the spit. This is a once-in-a-lifetime situation that's important to everybody in this room. So my binary question is, do you believe there can be and there is a close alignment of strategy and outcome for the spit among the town, KICA, and the Conservancy?
There should be. We're not there yet, but my hope is we will get there. That's more than yes or no, but
Positive.
Being the liaison to the Conservancy, I can say yes, we are aligned. I'm happy that we are now finally on a path to be aligned with KICA. Because as I think I said in the beginning, we can only master this as the 3 of us, one force.
So we have one more in the back, I think. Please.
Hold on.
He's got a mic. And then we'll take a brief break before we start with the next round.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have more of an extended question. As I listen to you both, somebody had said that you both sound so much alike. But my bigger question is, when I listen or when I read what you all post online, sometimes I get the impression that Michael's right, and if we have a different opinion, we're wrong. And sometimes I get a little bit caught up in Brad's legal stuff, which is fine, because I'm the first to admit, as many of you know, that I'll reach out to somebody and say, please explain this to me like a regular person so that I can understand it. I just want to understand, when you say you're so much in line, how do I understand that, Michael, when sometimes I read and you're always correcting everything I'm thinking, or you think we're thinking? So it's kind of a multi-person question, I guess.
Maybe 1 minute each.
Does the question make sense?
I'm not exactly sure how I would answer this. And I don't know where I'm jumping short here. Maybe it's my language, my poor language. If I come across that only my opinion is right, then I apologize, because that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to do sometimes when I feel forced to respond on Kiawah unfortunately, is to at least give a different perspective to things. I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's what I
Okay,
come
I
up.
mean, I think that's fair. I just think sometimes, I just wanted to understand it. How do I look at someone who's going to be the mayor and represent all of us and take all of our issues and concerns, to understand us? And when I read some of this, sometimes I don't get that impression that you're listening to, and this is just me. I mean, so I
Well,
can be totally wrong,
let's say
guys.
it this way, okay? I'm a human being, I have opinions, I cannot say yes to everybody. But what I do and what I promised to do, and I think I'm doing it, I'm responding to every single email I receive, and I respond to everything that I think requires an answer from the town. That's all I can say.
Brad, do you want to?
And so this will essentially constitute my closing statement in response to that, is that I just want to pick up first on what Judy O'Brien said earlier today at the KICA board meeting, that in all our interactions, my hope is that we would be respectful of one another and respectful of one another's views. We all on this island are pips and, previously important people, smart, capable. We're passionate, and we need to harness that passion in constructive ways. That is my single message to everybody. Maybe it'll fall on deaf ears. I hope not. We can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And not everybody's committed to what's best for Kiawah Island. They don't necessarily have the same view as to what that is, what the priority should be, or how best to get there, but that's fine. Let's try to work through these issues collectively. And the last thing I'll simply say is we're a month away from the election. You're going to start the absentee ballot process soon if you want to vote by absentee ballot or vote in person. Whoever you support, between Michael and I or the two candidates, I encourage people to vote. What's been sad is the level of turnout we've had on Kiawah Island. It's only been around 30%. We need to do better. We can do better. Please, whoever you support, get out and vote.
Do you have anything you want to finish up with?
Well, only one thing. The absentee ballot process is already in full swing. So you don't have to wait. You saw emails that were sent out by the town, by me, with the documents that you just easily fill out, sign. Just make sure you sign like your driver license. That's the only thing I want to remind you. Send it in. These are great people in North Charleston. If you have questions, they respond on the spot. They're super professional. And you should have your ballot within days. And then just follow the procedure and send it in, and your vote is counted in case that you cannot make it on the 23rd.
Thank you
But
to
thank you
both.
for your time.
Yeah,
Kevin,
very well
thank
done.
you.
Very
Thank
informative.
you, Michael. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
We'll try to take a 5 to 7 minute intermission, and we'll swap out, and we'll talk to our two town council candidates.
Thank you, guys.